thing I feel like to correlate with people. People will bring in one leaf or one twig about that big. We've had that come in, and the lab would chew my butt out if I sent that off. They always need so much of a sample, and in that little publication goes more over it. And then the best case they like is a piece that's good, and then a piece that shows the symptoms. So they can see what they're working with. And sometimes the progression, if you can see that on your sample, is absolutely perfect. So that's also a free service to you guys as well. If me and Savannah can't figure it out, we can send it off to Lexington, and we mail it off to Lexington. They report back at the lab. That is all they do is plant samples. Their lab, I've been there twice. It is the size of probably a car, it seems like. I mean, they have a very small area, and there's just plant samples lying around the room in rows, and I don't understand how they keep up with all of it, but they do. They're amazing. But if you ever have, let's say, a rose, and we can't figure out what's wrong with it or how to cure it, you can bring in that sample. We'll have all you fill you out all the forms and everything, and then we will send that off to Lexington for you. But that's also, it kind of breaks down more about the samples and everything in there. So what is a plant disease? It is any physiological or structural abnormality that is harmful to the plant from a living organism. And we had a training yesterday at Lake Barkley, and the oak leaf to the left over there, the far left, that is leaf scorch. It looks like someone took a lighter to a leaf. And that will, unfortunately, it's detrimental, so it will eventually kill your tree as well. And our tree specialist said it's about 10 years. So the significance of plant diseases, of course, it's frustrating. You care for this plant, you baby your plant, and it starts to show symptoms of disease. It can impact livelihoods, especially if you have huge trees like the one pictured. It's expensive a lot of times. And talking more about crop disease, which would be more of our agriculture agent, it can influence your food supply, or also with vegetables, it can also influence your food supply. But never get discouraged. It does happen to everyone. Casual agents of plant disease, sometimes it's just the environment. I'm ready for this cool down. Hopefully it stays cool. Sometimes overspraying of chemicals and pesticides, mechanical injury, a tree may be pruned wrong and that could cause a disease to come in, genetic mutations which are out of our control, and then a lot which we'll go over is infectious diseases. Those just even look kind of great, those pictures. Some examples of non-infectious problems. Blossom end rot. I think our tomatoes get that every single year. It's just very common as well. It's a calcium deficiency. And then cat facing, which I haven't experienced this personally yet. It is a fluctuation in your soil moisture. I feel like tomatoes, they're hard to grow a lot of times, and once you get that right spot, don't change. And of course, always look at your different varieties. They may be resistant to other diseases. Some non-infection problems will not move from plant to plant. So an herbicide injury, cultural, some maybe watering problems, maybe too little, too much water, and then chloride toxicity. Some infectious casual agents, which I know a lot of you guys see. This is caused by fungi, water molds, bacteria, viruses, nematodes, and some parasitic plants as well. get alarmed by it. A lot of times I'll take some gloves and just scoop up that area and throw it in the trash. But it's a lot of times spread by excess rainfall as well, when you'll really start seeing that come up. So symptoms is the expression of disease by a plant. And then the signs is the physical evidence of a causal agent. So the symptoms, does anyone know any examples of what that could be?
Drooping,
Yep.
leaves,
Yellowing,
color.
stuff like that. And then the signs is could be dieback. Or that's when you could see, maybe start seeing that kind of sooty mold on your plant. Plant pathogen is the causal agent of a plant disease. And plant disease is the outward expression of a plant as a result of a plant pathogen. And here is, I know blight is really common. I know you guys answered that as well. This is fire blight on an apple tree. Plant pathogens and disease development. So pathogen movement, it can be spread by a lot of different ways. I always seem like I find disease more when there's excess rainfall. It can be spread by wind, seed, insects, animals, and people. And a lot of times infected debris. If I had some shears and I saw my tomato plant hurt or it looked kind of weak, and I decided to trim off that branch that looked diseased, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna walk over to my vegetable plants and start trimming on those too. I have now spread my disease. So they always recommend they make little wipes for your pruners, or rubbing alcohol works as well. Just make sure if you notice a plant with a disease, you clip it with your clippers or your pruners, whatever you may use. Disinfect those before moving on to your next plant. Some fungal pathogens, multicellular organisms that lack chlorophyll. There is more than 8,000 pathogen species. Water mold. This looks like a picture of a watermelon. They're not a true fungi and they require water. The fungal reproduction, they reproduce by spores, as you can see. And a spore is a fungus like a seed is to a plant. So that's where it all starts from.
Which is everywhere in there.
And here's some examples. I think this would be real interesting to see under a microscope as well. But if you send something off to the lab, this is the kind of stuff they would look at. That's why they always recommend when we send off samples, some things, I don't know what it was called. Hey Savannah, what is the tree disease we went over yesterday? The tree disease? Laurel wilt. A lot of times you kind of hack away at the tree that it's already declining. You'll hack away at the bark of it, and you'll start to notice a black streak in the bark. That is a laurel wilt. They recommend taking that little hacked off piece, sticking it in a bucket of ice or like a little Ziploc baggie of ice, just anything to keep it cold, and then ship it off. Because they want the freshest sample possible. Fungal reproduction. Some have reported structures that can be seen with the naked eye. We also have, she is a tree specialist, a tree health specialist. Her name is Ellen Crawford. She kind of dips her toes in mushrooms. As you can see in this picture, if you ever have any mushroom questions, we always usually send people to her. But just another source that we have. Because fungus, I feel like in fungi are really hard to identify because you want to see the top and the bottom of that mushroom or fungus. more pictures the better. Infection of plants by fungi, they enter through natural openings or wounds, as you can see in that first picture, or they also direct penetration via enzymes.
So are these enzymes that they contain or that are already on the plant?
They're already on the plant.
Okay.
That's why a lot of times when trees, when we start noticing disease, they'll have an open wound. And that's like the first picture. People say they'll put like a black tar on that pruning cut. We do not recommend to do that. Just a good pruning cut will also help the tree and it will heal itself, so it will not get a pathogen or fungi. Septoria leaf spot, this is also very common. And early blight, I feel like I mostly see early blight on tomatoes, and that's the most common one that I've seen on our tomato plants, as well as that blossom end rot. They're kind of neck and neck there. I've heard of some people, they see those tomatoes, they say, oh, I'll just cut off like half of it, the other half's great, I'll still eat it. We do not recommend that.
Oh no, that explains a lot right there.
Yeah. If you notice your crop has a disease, I would recommend tossing that, just because that may be its entrance wound, and you may have some friends inside that crop there. So if your vegetables ever look like that, if they have blight or leaf spot or blossom end rot, just make sure to dispose of those crops. We really have had someone ask that. Late blight is another, this is also on a tomato. And then here is kind of a microscopic view of those, which I think are really interesting. And as you guys went over the powdery mildew, it kind of looks like someone took flour and dusted it over the leaves. Cedar apple rust, as you can see that kind of orangey yellow coloring on the pictures. Chestnut light and root rot. Root rot is usually caused by soggy soil. So a lot of times plants, they kind of want good water flow and not just that soggy soil where they don't get the root rot. Succulents and cacti, I feel like, are very common with the root rot. People get excited, they buy a new plant and they just keep watering it. And or if your pot doesn't have a drainage hole, then root rot is also very common. Some bacterial diseases. They always can't be seen with a naked eye. That's why we send it off to Lexington. Hopefully our Princeton lab will be up and running in a couple of years where we can resend them off to there, so we have a quicker response and Lexington won't be so overwhelmed. We don't have that capability here, but we just send it off to Lexington. They can see that view there. They enter through wounds or just natural openings. And sometimes, that's why we have a lab, and me and Savannah are experts on all things horticulture, and they're hard to identify sometimes without that microscope. Because as you guys saw, a lot of diseases look exactly alike. Blight, rust, they all kind of have those spots, leaf spot. It just depends on their microscopic view, and then also how those spots are, what colors they are. Bacterial signs. Bacteria reproduce inside plant tissue to high levels. And again, you can confirm this by checking under a microscope. Here is leaf spot again. The crown gall is another one.
Is that caused from an injury or is it actual disease?
That is a disease. Bacterial wilt. I think the bacterial slime string is pretty interesting as well. These are a lot of
assumption is that, I mean, like on the lease spot, it looked like it's just a few spots,
Mhm.
but eventually it's just gonna keep getting worse, but, I mean, at what point do you kind of decide, do I do something, or this is,
I think it's up to your own discretion. A lot of times I'll, if I start noticing the disease on my crop that I'm trying to grow, or if it's taking over, a lot of times when you get a disease, it's just managing that disease, unfortunately. They make sprays, organic sprays, but honestly it's kind of more managing. That's why we recommend like buying the varieties that's more resistant to these diseases. And then here is blight as well, another way. Some viral diseases. They can only be seen using an electron microscope. Sometimes they are simple and they cannot reproduce on their own. And unfortunately, they are systematic, so once they get infected, there is no cure. Again, this would be something we have to send off to Lexington to correctly identify it. They can be spread by infected plants, nematodes, human seeds, insects. Does anyone know what that bottom picture is?
Aphid?
Those are our aphid friends. They can be spread by them or grafting. And then here is a microscopic view of those. Color break is also another viral disease. I think it's beautiful, but
Yeah.
it is unfortunately disease. Ring spots and line patterns. I've never seen the tobacco rattle virus. I think it makes the plant more unique, but this is also a viral disease. Mosaic. Necrosis and distortion. And some other plant disease causing organisms, the nematodes again, phytoplasmas, and parasitic plants. Some plant parasitic nematodes, they are microscopic unsegmented worms with a stylet mouthpart. They are invisible to the naked eye, and they mostly infect roots, but some affect above ground plants. I know farmers will deal with this a lot, unfortunately. And then these pathogens, somewhat like bacteria, but much smaller and have no cell wall. They are transmitted by phyllo-feeding insects such as the leafhoppers. Parasitic plants lack the ability to produce and acquire nutrients or water, so that would cause them to suffocate. They produce seeds that are spread by wind, contaminated soil, or animals. Plant diseases, abnormal and harmful, they sometimes take time to develop. They're expressed by your symptoms and result from a casual agent, which could be an insect. Sometimes I wish the plant would tell you what's wrong, is what this one means. Sometimes just like your pet at home, I wish plants would tell me in Savannah, I have blight, here's how to cure me. But it is what it is, that's why we have specialists up in Lexington. on it so you can see the spread of the disease, the coloring, and also the picture of the whole tree. Some people just bring in a little picture of the tree. We want to see the whole tree. We a lot of times do site visits as well, just so we can see if there's damage to the tree, what could be causing it. If there's insect entrance holes, or lawns. Sometimes new construction will cause lawns to just have trouble. Or they may have just put in a new sprinkler system, or maybe at the bottom of the hill, or there may be a lot of shade. So sometimes seeing a bigger picture is better. Some strategies for diagnosing plant problems. You want to know the host plant. You want to know what type of plant, the variety if possible. Check for symptoms and signs. You want to see what parts of the plant are affected and looking for patterns. That could be if on the leaf, if it starts to decline outward in or inward out, that's two different diseases. If you notice just one whole branch is dying and the whole rest of the tree is fine, so just lots of different ways. Or if the bottom of the tree is dying to the top. Always ask questions. We always do as well, just so we can get the full picture of the plant and its symptoms and problems. You want to make sure you correctly identify the plant, and also to recognize how the tree actually grows. A lot of times in landscaping, we kind of prune it to the way you make it more aesthetically appealing, such as boxwoods, as we went over last week. We just want to recognize that normal growth so we can really figure out the problem. Some symptoms, as we went over, which is leaf spots, wilting, stunting, stripling, blackened roots, and then the signs, which may be mold, insects, or mites. Whenever you bring in a plant sample to our office, it's about a 3-pager, all the questions we'll ask you. And you don't have to answer all of those. It is overwhelming to look at it first, which means Savannah can go over with you as well. But it's just anything that could possibly be wrong with the plant. And I apologize, we were outside all day yesterday. Confirm part of the plant that is affected. If you're noticing it on the fruit, if the roots are rotten, if you notice any galls on the branches, if there's spots on the leaves. Sometimes even the branch will have kind of a discoloration as well. So just whenever you notice something wrong with your plant, look at the whole plant, really dive into it and see what is all showing these symptoms. Here's an example. Just the top part's dead, not the bottom. This is a good picture to show us as well. But sometimes even a site visit is even better. We could have noticed there's, as you can see, construction in the background. Or it could be more at the bottom of the hill. It could be really soggy right there. So more of a site visit is the best, but we want to see a full picture of the plant and up close as well. Burling is also a lot of times we notice as well. And then weed eater marks around the base, we see that a lot as well. It happens. Just make sure to take off that twine. Look for patterns. As you can see, just kind of around that border of that bottom picture is diseased. And then that top picture, you kind of see a slow progression of that. And again, this could be the site, it could be just the plant, it could be groupings of plants. That's also, my top picture is not my favorite way whenever they have all that around the plant, but it doesn't really give the tree room to grow and flourish. But definitely looking at your entire site. Ask yourself questions on that form as well. It has all those questions. How old the plant is, how long it has been in your site, how long you have noticed these diseases or symptoms occurring. Weather conditions, that plays a huge factor. Has it been raining a lot? Have we been in a drought like we have lately? Is it in full sun? Is it in partial sun? Is there been new construction? then there's site disturbances, proper drainage, again, the weather, we may have an ice storm, hopefully never like that again. Cultural practices, it may be planted as we went over last week, or Kelly did, too deep. You may have a volcano mulch around your tree. Just lots of different stuff to go over and go look at. Incomplete information on those forms may be an incorrect diagnosis that we receive. So again, you can always reach out to us, the extension office. We can also reference books for you guys or publications. We have a huge drawer of filing cabinets too, of publications. Private testing services, plant diagnostic clinic, which we have that in Lexington, which we send off for you, and master gardeners. They're also a helpful resource to us as well, which you guys are becoming.
Do we have a graduation or something?
You guys can if you want. You will get a certificate, so.
Oh, boy.
I know the master gardeners, speaking of that, they usually have a December kind of holiday party where they all get together, and me and Savannah kind of fancies up this room a little bit for them, and it's like a potluck, so it's just like a little social get-together. They haven't set the date on that yet, but of course you guys will all be invited to that. But we can have a graduation if you guys want. I'd be game for that. Play some music and but I'll let you guys know once they pick that date. Some plant disease management principles: exclusion, avoidance, resistance, protection, and eradication. For exclusion, prevent the introduction of a pathogen to an area that does not currently exist. I know that's easier said than done. But just proper management, cleaning your tools, being aware of what you're bringing into your garden or your landscaping will help. Avoidance, preventing the establishment of a pathogen. You can do this by buying your healthy and certified disease-free plants or seeds, so picking good varieties, selecting good planting sites, rotating your crops, avoid wounding your plant, which could be from a weed eater or just improper pruning, and maintaining your plant health. Resistance, again, just picking those plants that are maybe more resistant than others from diseases. And some methods include selecting seeds with resistance to common pathogen and disease. And consult a county agent such as myself, or we have agriculture agent. We have an agent in every single county, or a reliable internet source for information about disease-resistant varieties or cultivars. And if you guys ever have a question like, for tomato plants, what variety should I pick? Just reach out to us and we can try to find that material for you guys. I wish we could just poster it at home centers for people, but I don't think they would allow us to do that. Some protection, implementing steps to protect the plant from pathogens. Some methods include modifying the environment, monitor risk for pathogen infection, remove weeds or other plant species, apply a physical barrier, and biological or herbicide treatments if you choose to do that. Eradication. The plant is infected, thus there is a need to limit the spread of that pathogen. You want to contain that pathogen so it doesn't keep spreading throughout your garden. As I recommended in sanitation, again, just wiping your printers, wiping all your tools, keep those nice and clean. That will also extend the life of your materials and tools. Yes, ma'am.
Question, so when you clean out your garden, which I'm getting ready to do because it's wasted stuff.
It's about that time of year.
Yeah, it is, it's just so hot. Do you recommend doing anything to the soil?
I a lot of times just kind of till it up a little bit.
Putting anything in it, any kind of fungicide or anything?
I don't personally.
Yeah. Nothing's gonna carry over the spores or anything's gonna carry over to the next year? It doesn't get cold enough?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. There's no easy way to say
Can't
that,
fix it.
unfortunately,
Well,
unless
is
you
there
start
something-
completely
Is there something you
over.
can do to prevent that?
I'm sorry?
is there something you can do can you apply something to prevent that?
I've never heard of a way to completely eliminate the disease before. Crop rotation does help as well. And some people will apply those fungicide applications, but I'm not sure about just to the soil though, unfortunately. Helping to buy those disease resistant varieties will help that, but it's hard to completely get rid of a disease.
I've heard cover crops are a bit helpful. They kind of.
Cover crops are pretty helpful as well to help protect that soil.
And protect it.
You can't really like sterilize your soil either.
No, unfortunately, and a lot of times, you don't know what type of soil sometimes you're buying as well. I always try to buy a reliable source for soil. I like Phelps Farm Store.
Yeah,
I like their Pro Mix a lot.
Yeah,
I've always been happy with their potting soil, so
yeah.
definitely a good source really helps as well. Sanitation, pruning out infected portions of the plant. Whenever you notice, of course, you guys know, if you notice part of your plant is diseased, which we've gone over, when you prune off that part, throw it in the trash, don't throw it on the ground, that will spread your disease. Always clean out your plant debris at the end of the season, and pick all fruit from the tree. I've heard they recommend to either burn it or bury it. Of course, don't compost it, but I always just like to throw it in the trash and then dispose of it that way. Because I've been told if you burn it, sometimes it gets into the smoke or into the air and carries that way. I'm not 100% sure on that, so I always just throw it in the trash and dispose of it. Fungicides, most effective when applied before a disease is infected, so maybe a pre-treatment. Fungicides work to inhibit fungal growth and reproduction. Sometimes they're not always the cure for, but they're just maintaining, helping you maintain it and not spread the disease further. And always know when fungicides are not appropriate. They make more organic fungicides in a way to spray. There's lots of different ones. I really enjoy Captain Jack's fungicide. And then they make Garden Save. They make copper fungicides. So there's lots of different options. Just always make sure when you're buying these to look on the back of that sprayer and see how often or when you need to spray that as well.
Could you go over this one more time? I'm sorry, Captain Jack was the first one.
I like Captain Jack's. I
Uh-huh.
think it's Bonide is the brand of it.
Okay,
I like Captain Jack's copper fungicide.
okay.
And then they also make, of course, Seven Dust. That's another very common one. And then they make Garden Safe is the
Garden
brand.
Safe.
Okay, making sure. So again, just making sure to get all this together. Make sure to manage these diseases the best you can. Get it identified by us, or we can send off to the lab, or just a reliable source so you can eradicate this disease and help just manage it. Before you spray these fungicides, we always recommend as well to cut off that parts of the disease, throw it away, and then spray it. And that will help manage that even further. And it's the top picture, the raking the leaves, clean up the plant debris,